Welcome back to the Uncle Goof podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Walker, and today's episode is a special one. I'm sitting down with Brent Camalich, the founder and CEO of Dude Be Nice, a lifestyle brand that's all about inspiring kindness, building community, and making a positive impact. Brent's story is full of passion, hustle, and heart, and I can't wait for you to hear how a simple idea turned into a movement that's changing lives. We'll dive into his journey, the power of connection, and how small acts of kindness can lead to something way bigger than we ever imagined. So grab your coffee, sit back, and enjoy this conversation with the one and only Brent Camalich. Today, I'm welcoming my good friend, former colleague, and all-around good guy from Austin, Texas, Brent Camalich. Hey, Brent, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jeffrey. How are you, Uncle Goof?
I'm doing fine. I really appreciate you coming on. You know, as I told you as we were prepping for this, I'm really just looking to talk to some great people around basically how they've lived their lives through relationships and acquaintances and have sort of leveraged, in a mutually beneficial way, those types of relationships, either personally or professionally, to just kind of move their way through life. Because I've found that that's kind of been my thing over the years. It wasn't by design. It just sort of happened that I tend to know quite a few people, and I find that I'm enriched every time that I meet somebody new, that I've worked with somebody. And I don't know, I just found it to be very fascinating. And I know you have a fascinating life too. So I wanted to talk to you about it.
Sounds great. I can attest that you have a lot of relationships that somehow I think most people that meet you, right, are like, how do you know so many people? But I don't know anybody who is as good at maintaining relationships as you. So,
thank you.
That's just one of your gifts for sure.
I appreciate that. And, this isn't going to be about me, but I appreciate hearing that. So thanks very much. First, let's start out by you just kind of giving us an idea of who you are, what you do. Tell us a little bit about your family, maybe what you do for work today, and then also how you and I got to know each other.
Sure. I'll try to give the Cliff Notes version of my bio. When I think about my career, went to school in California. I live in Austin, Texas now, as you mentioned. I went to school called Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and it was a great school. And I thought my dream job would be in journalism. And so I pursued that pretty quickly. I took as many opportunities, I created as many opportunities as possible for me to be around that space, and eventually became a television news producer. Sounds glamorous, but it was brutal. It was a grind. Didn't love telling the sad stories I told every single day. And so I knew pretty quick that this wasn't going to be the career that I actually pursued for the rest of my life, even though that's what I thought I wanted to do. And so ultimately I left that job and went and worked for a summer camp that I'd worked at in college. I was like, I need something good for the soul. I got to ultimately end up being a program director, so kind of the director of fun for kids up in the Sierra Nevadas in California. And then from there, I went and worked for an organization called E2K, who does game day entertainment for the 49ers. My best friend happened to play for the team at the time, and was like, hey, you would be great at this. And I was like, that sounds great. And it was in working for the 49ers is where I met you, because you continued to work with the team, work with the organization E2K that helps the 49ers game day entertainment as well as other NFL entities. And you and I became quick friends. And my life really changed when, because I met you, actually, which is pretty cool. When I think about some of the people that have had the biggest impact in my life, you were working, you were doing other things, but you also helped out with various NFL events and activities. And that's where, again, we met. And we worked, a NFL Pro Bowl together, and we continued to become friends. And when you were starting a new team in a marketing capacity up at T-Mobile in Bellevue, Washington, you actually reached out to me and were like, hey, can you join my team, or would you be interested? And at that time, I was coming to the end of my contract with E2K, and I was like, this sounds scary. I have no idea. Washington sounded like a foreign land being a California kid, but ultimately I was like, sounds great. I was getting married at the time. No kids. So went to Washington, lived up there for 5 years. That took me back to California through a series of different events and activities. You and I worked together, became even better friends. And you were my boss also, which was a fun experience. And then ultimately came back to Southern California to start to work for a digital marketing agency, where I got to work with a lot of brands that Walmart works with. So spent a lot of time between Los Angeles and Bentonville, Arkansas. And then ultimately, I knew I wanted to start my own thing. So 10 years ago, I started a company called Dude Be Nice, which is really a culmination of like kind of everything I love. I love telling stories like I did in journalism. I love events and creating different experiences like I did at E2K. I love working with youth and kids and like kind of creating positive things in the community. And so this brand has taken me on a journey where our mission is to inspire people to treat themselves and others better. And we do that through various activities in schools. We do a ton of multimedia. I love telling stories, like I said, making videos. And so we started creating videos that really bring to life this Dude Be Nice brand. And it's really just opened the door for all sorts of crazy, cool opportunities. And, I would say, to round this out, my relationship with you and various people that have believed in me over the years is really what's kind of elevated me to, have these opportunities and create these different experiences. So, to go full circle, this podcast is really about connections and
Yep.
and maintaining relationships. And ultimately, I think the other thing is finding, people that believe in you. And, you were always that guy for me to believe in me. And, it's amazing how someone that believes in you can set you on a positive trajectory in life. That was a long answer, but
Yeah,
that's my profile.
it was, but it was great. And, first of all, I can't believe it's been 10 years since you started Dude Be Nice. You've done an amazing
Yeah.
job with it. And we'll be putting in the show notes the links to your different social media distribution channels and so forth. And but also, you kind of glossed over the Pro Bowl part where I really kind of fell in love with Brent Camalich. I will tell the I will tell the story. We had been working all week in Hawaii on this Pro Bowl, and Brent and I, really got along well. And at the end of the week, we always had a post game party, and we had this party, and there was a band playing at it, and Brent decides when they start playing, when they're about to play "Sweet Home Alabama." That was the song, right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Brent jumps up and says, "Hey, I can play guitar," and he jumped up and played guitar, and I was like, "This guy's awesome!" And I knew at that point I got to do more with this guy. So that's when I really fell in love with Brent Camalich. But it's been a great relationship.
I think it's a good note to, thank you for saying that. But I think it's a good note for people that listen. Like, it's amazing sometimes, like when you're actually let yourself be yourself, that people gravitate towards that. Oftentimes in the corporate business space, it's like we're a different version of ourselves. We're trying to impress people in different ways. But, some of the moments where I've just like said, screw it, I'm just going to kind of be me and like what instinctually comes to me to show, not even to show off, just to show people like, this is what I do. Yeah. Maybe sometimes I'll grab a guitar and get on stage randomly, or I'll say off the cuff things, or just like share an idea that may be stupid. Right. And I think it makes like amazing things can come from that in your life.
Oh yeah, 100%. And in fact, those you being you is what was so great when you worked with me at T-Mobile. Even though I was your boss, I was really just your supervisor, and we were really good friends, and we worked very well together to pull off some amazing events and activities. And but it was your freeness of you just being you that really endeared you to so many people and allowed you to be successful there.
It can get you in trouble. It can get you in trouble.
Absolutely,
too. It can get you in trouble.
Yeah.
but I think over time with discernment, you kind of like figure out where, like how much of yourself you can be where you're not going to cross a certain line. And I'm still tiptoeing. My wife sometimes is like, you need to like, maybe censor yourself a little bit more.
There's always a balance and so forth. And I'm sure we've all crossed the line. I know I have. But, at the same time, you know, I think most people, and maybe I'm overstating, maybe I'm projecting, but I think most people want to be remembered or memorable in some way, and I would much rather be remembered as someone that brought fun to the workplace, or that had silly stories. And I mean, you and I, we're not going to get into this, but we had a great time in Miami. I remember one time where we rented tuxedos and went to this formal party down in Miami for a work trip, and convincing our
Yeah, I
boss
feel
that that he had to pay
I
for the
feel I feel
tuxes.
I feel like I feel like a lot of I feel like you're living a good life when you find yourself in a lot of places. And I know you do this probably more than anybody I know. When you find yourself in a lot of places where you ask yourself, like, how did I get
Oh,
here and why am I here?
all the
But to
time.
figure out how to like find yourself in those places,
Yeah.
whether it be, for me at different live sporting events
Hmm.
for me in the Dominican Republic several years ago, speaking at an international school, or filming videos in Reading, Pennsylvania,
Right.
with a bunch of people that don't necessarily look like me, but showed me so much love. Like sometimes I'm just like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's when you're doing life right. You're like finding yourself in places that just are kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, that's so true. And I say that to myself, I don't know, multiple times a month, certainly several times a year, because I tend to maybe step into things that other people. Well, I don't know. I'm just not afraid to take risks, I guess. And sometimes those risks pay off and give me opportunities that I wouldn't normally have. But I want to back up a second. You and I both worked for a company called E2K, and I've worked with them in different capacities over many years. And you worked for a period of time with them and still have some of those relationships. But, one of the things that's always stuck out in my mind about this company and has really made me want to stay close to people is just how unique the family was. And I want to ask you to kind of
Yeah,
explain the difference between that type of work family and sort of the office, or call it quote regular job work family.
yeah. I think we've been lucky. I think having jobs where you go create things inside and outside of the office,
Hmm.
you you create a different sense of community. Working at a company like E2K, for example, for those of you that don't know, they're an events and entertainment company. They essentially create experiences, whether it be big conferences they produce, or a Super Bowl halftime show or a Pro Bowl halftime show. Like they create these incredible experiences where it's people that are it's kind of like a tribe that travels together to these places, right? To like execute these things. So you're eating together, you're staying up late together. And I think that is one of the coolest experiences, to be able to work in an environment where you're like, it's kind of like, it's no different probably than a linesman, right? Who's like out in the field doing something
Hmm.
together that may be dangerous, or fire people or the military, right? It's like when you do something together that's like kind of this full 360 experience, I think you're just naturally going to build more special bonds and relationships, especially when you like literally leave the office and go work on some project together. For us, it was working on events around the Pro Bowl in Hawaii. Like, what a cool experience! Like, woe is me, right? But those people, like those, some of those are like my favorite memories of jobs in my entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. I think whether it's positive or negative or even indifferent, those shared experiences really create a bond between people. So you talk about like fire department, or I would imagine nursing, probably dozens and
Like
dozens of different types of careers.
when you go to war with people, like quote unquote, like going to the Pro Bowl is very different than actually going to war, right? But
Obviously.
the same concept being that you are like kind of in this tribal community with the same goal
Hmm.
together is like it's impossible not to build great relationships.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess for me, what comes out of that is, if you're someone who wants to really bond with people or create those experiences that are long lasting with people, You know, do what you can to get involved in whether it's work or groups or social events or whatever, where you're having these shared experiences. And you know, not everybody wants to do that, and that's totally fine. But I think that that's, you know, that's one way for people to get involved and have those shared experiences to really last more of a
Yeah.
lifetime, or at least a long period of time. Now, it does help with the likes of the E2K folks, is that they were very creative people and fun people. We were doing fun
Fun.
things. So, you know, those
Yeah.
kinds of things you want to do more of together. You know, sometimes if you go through a traumatic experience with somebody, you know, sometimes they're negative experience. So, you know, obviously you want to put yourself in the best positive light when you can. But I think really the takeaway is just getting those deep relationships through your work or other social experiences, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, Jeff, actually, like why some friendships stick, right? And
mhm,
like some of my best friends are still buddies from middle school and high school and college. It's like, of course, I have new friends, but some of my most core group of friends, and the reason that we're still friends is we just when we get together, we talk about that like all the crazy stuff we did, right?
right,
These
right,
experiences that we all shared together. And if you know your only shared experiences with someone is like, you know, very surface level, it's
mhm,
not going to ever be like a true friendship. Like you and I have gone on all sorts of adventures together
yes, we
in
have.
our life, right? When you go on adventures with people, like that's when you truly build lasting relationships. And so I'm always looking to, you know, just have different experiences with people to solidify those relationships forever. I want to sit when I'm 80 years old and talk about those like hilarious, fun memories, whether it be, you know, toilet papering a house when we were seniors in high school, or like, you know, going on a hunt, right? As I get older with some of my buddies.
Right. Well, it's interesting because, you know, I realized a long time ago I'm different than some and similar to others in that I really thrive on relationships and staying in touch with people. I realize there are people that just don't care at all. I've had people say to me, "Why do you care? You know, why do you want to stay in touch with people you went to high school with? You just went to high school with them." And I'm like, "No, I didn't just go to high school with them. You know, I was in the band with them, or I was in drama with them, or I went to sporting events with them, or you know, we experienced whatever." And for some reason, I can't explain it, and I can't say whether it's good or bad, but I value those types of things, and I like to know what people are doing, and I don't want to get in anybody's way, and I don't want to be a bother, but you know, I do like staying connected. And I will tell you, more often than not, I've had people say to me, "Gosh, you're really good at staying in touch with people, and I got to get better at that." You know, and again, that's just me. Not everybody's like that. In fact, two quick stories. I went to recently. I had put together, because I've been trying for a while. I put together a group of about 13 of my fraternity brothers to get together at Top Golf and just hit some balls around and shoot the bull for a couple of hours. Um, we had a pretty good turnout. I invited probably 25 or 30 people, and we got about 13, 14 people there. And one guy in particular that didn't show up, he was available. He lives close by. He had the time to do it. He just said, "Nah." And I'm like, "Why don't you want to go?" And he goes, "I just don't care that much." And I found it very, very interesting because this guy is not a social
It's at
reject.
least he's honest.
He was
At least
honest,
he's
but
honest about,
I guess my
yeah.
thing, I wasn't upset with him. I just don't understand it, and that's okay. He's just very different. But the guys who did get there, some of them, you know, we hadn't seen in 30 years. Some of them I've seen, you know, recently. I would say all of those guys I had seen at least once, if not multiple times, since we left college. And many of the guys there had never seen or talked to any of the guys that were there. So it was a little bit strange for me that way, but, and I guess I'm strange in that way, but that's something interesting to me. The other thing is, this is slightly embarrassing, but I went into, I popped into the class of 1984's high school 40-year high school reunion recently. And if you know me, you know that I graduated in 1983. And so that's obviously not my class. But what's funny was about a month earlier, I got a call from somebody who was organizing that party, and they said, "Hey, are you going to join our planning committee meeting tonight?" And I said, "Well, you know I wasn't in your class, right?" And she's like, "Oh, I totally forgot. You were just so present, around our class that I just forgot you weren't in our class." So she goes, "Come by anyway." So anyway, I popped in the other night, and here's the embarrassing part. People are like, "I knew you were going to be here. I knew I'd see you tonight." But
That's funny.
I've also never understood why a class reunion, at least with a school our size, 500 per class or something, why you don't, sort of stack them and have the year before, the year after, because there were so many, sort of cross
Oh
grade
yeah,
friends.
lots of overlap
Yeah,
between
yeah.
sports and activities,
And
totally, and
and you have
classes.
exactly, and sometimes spouses, they married somebody younger or older in the school, or they have a brother or sister that was in that class, and you were friends with them too. But anyway, so that was kind of funny. But I had a great time seeing all these folks, and it did feel like it was my class as well. But I also was very conscious,
Yeah, you are a different breed. I don't think I could do that, but that's what makes you. That's what makes you you.
But I was also
And
very conscious.
own
I
it.
didn't drink any of their drinks. I didn't eat any of their food, and I
Oh,
did
you didn't.
believe. No, I didn't. I just didn't. I didn't want to encroach, so I kind of stood back and just sort of talked to some people, and then moved on. But it was enriching for me because these people were, some of these people were equally important in my youth as the people in my class or others. So anyway, so that's that. Um, let's see. A couple of other things. Talk to me about some of the relationships that you have had outside of work that have been sort of, I don't like the word valuable necessarily. All relationships are valuable, in my opinion. Um, and I never want to look at, relationships or friendships or even acquaintances or contacts as someone to take advantage of. However, being realistic, there are mutually beneficial things that come from relationships. Sometimes it's just feeling or love. Sometimes it's mentorship. Sometimes it's access to things. Sometimes it's, whatever. Sometimes you're providing something to them and you get out of it, the benefit of knowing that you help somebody. So give me, if you could, you don't have to name names necessarily, but tell me about a couple of relationships that have kind of helped you get through your life, if you will.
I mean, obviously, my wife. We've known each other since we were third grade, and we didn't start dating till after college. But it's pretty cool to have someone that grew up in your same community with mutual friends that like we just kind of come from the same cloth in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's obviously special. But so let me think. I mean, dude, I've like I said, I find that over time, there's a very small group of people that I feel like not just tolerate me, but like appreciate who I am and find that enamoring. Doesn't mean they wouldn't correct me if I'm, off on something or provide suggestions, but I think it's really important to find friends, and I have a good chunk of them that like really believe in you and think that like you're enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like there were definitely periods in my childhood where, I didn't come from a lot of money, right? But like if you go 5 minutes in the other direction, it's a more affluent part of our community. And I felt like there was definitely a feeling I had, like I always felt like less than
Mm-hmm.
those people, whether it was my insecurity or not, right? And like those relationships never lasted because I felt like I was always trying to be accepted
Mm-hmm.
versus like at some point you find your people,
Yeah.
right? And so like one of my newer friends is the same, like one of my best friends is, someone that has become a best friend since like 2017. His name's Jason. And I think not only do we have a lot in common, but he just like kind of just liked having me around. And I was like, this feels good. You feel it. You feel it when people want to hang out with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
And
sure.
like, I feel like as I've gotten older, there seems to be just a smaller group of people that actually want to hang out with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other people that you feel like you're either annoying or a nuisance to. And so, you just gravitate towards the people that you feel like want to spend time with you. And I feel like I've got a good group of guys and, friends, girls that are kind of friends of all of my wife and I's that we've all grown up with, that it's like, oh, okay. Like
Hmm.
we like hanging out with each other. It doesn't mean we always get along,
Yeah.
but you just realize, like, why am I wasting so much time trying to like get into these circles when there's plenty of people that would like that enjoy having you around?
No,
Does that make sense?
absolutely, yeah, for sure. And what came to mind when you were talking about that are a couple things. One is, my guess is you probably weren't really yourself around those people you were trying to either impress or ingratiate yourself with, or whatever. You probably weren't fully yourself, so that might have been felt, or maybe you were putting off an air. And I don't necessarily mean deliberately or even egregiously, but inadvertently putting off an air of maybe less confidence, or maybe less likable, or maybe whatever. It could be anything, right? And I suppose the second one is self awareness, right?
Yeah,
I work
totally.
on that a lot. Sometimes I definitely feel like I might walk into a situation and I'm like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be here, or maybe I shouldn't maybe I should move on from this conversation to another one, because I can feel that they're not really feeling it. And so, I will say, at that reunion I went to, there was somebody there who had zero self-awareness, and it was really uncomfortable. And sometimes you just click with people and sometimes you don't.
And
And
that's
yeah,
okay. It's like, stop. You
totally.
don't have to.
Yeah.
I think a lot of time, there's been too many times in my life where I've like tried to force a relationship,
Right.
and as you get older, you just become more self-aware and realize, like, why am I trying to like force something that's not there when I've got these people that like love and appreciate me, albeit can still be annoyed with me or whatever. But at the end of the day, you can tell they want to be, around me, and I want to be around them. So why
Right.
not lean into those relationships? It doesn't mean you can't have new relationships, and you find those people. Like, since I moved to Austin, we've definitely found some friends like that. But it's nice just to have your people, and it's okay to have a smaller group versus a larger group.
Right. Well, and you're the kind of person, I think, like that when appropriate, there's the relationships go deeper than just the one on one. So, when you and I got to know each other, you really wanted to get to know my family as well, which was really important to me, right? You were always very
Yeah.
good to my kids and to my wife and to my dog, and and that was really important to me. And I think that when you find those relationships that go just beyond the I see you at work, or I see you at this place, but you end up running into them at a coffee shop and just sitting down and having a conversation with them, and maybe their spouse or some other family member that's with them. But let me
Yeah.
ask you a question about the term networking. I don't love that term, but it's something that we all do, whether we like it or not. But what does networking mean to you, or do you have a better term for it when it comes to sort of building connections and relationships?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I just said. To me, to me, it's very it's very easy to tell when someone comes off with an agenda
Hmm.
when you have an interaction with them. And frankly, I think it's okay to have an agenda, but if you can't have genuine inquisitiveness, then it's going to be hard for you to develop a real network. I hope that people I've interacted with, whether they can do something for me or not, feel like I have a genuine interest in their lives.
Hmm.
And I've found that, to my detriment, sometimes I ask too many questions, right? I talk too
Yeah.
much. I'm like, I maybe even cross the line because I am so curious about people's stories and lives. In fact, that's what I do for a living. Like,
Yeah.
I tell stories, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, but so to me, networking is more about just being curious, right? And I think that's where amazing things can happen. And it can also be just being yourself in situations where people kind of notice what you can bring to their world. Like in the case of you and I, we met it, in a unique capacity, and where you were like, "Hey, this guy's kind of interesting. Maybe he's someone I want to spend more time with." Essentially, in
Mm-hmm.
a work role or friendship role, was when I got on stage and played with a random band, Sweet Home Alabama. Right, so there was a sense of like me, hopefully being curious about you and vice versa, but then also seeing how we interact in the real world and creating those opportunities that I think creates an authentic network.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And in fact, you just sort of answered my next question, which is what would you say is the most authentic way to build your network? But you really touched on that. And so I'm going to ask you this question instead, because I think authenticity is critical. Authenticity and trust, right? You talked about, somebody having an agenda. I've definitely had agendas in the past. I mean, we all do to some degree. Sometimes that agenda is just getting to know somebody. Sometimes it's trying to get something from them or get to
Right.
somebody else through them. But let me ask you this: if have you do you feel like you've relied more on people to get things done, or more people have relied on you over time to either get things done or get to people? What do you think?
Um, I think that probably so far in my career, I've probably relied more on other people, kind of like my network, right, to get me to places, and then I hope I've delivered once I get to those places in a way that like now there's that trust.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this: one of my like, I think that's true self awareness from that perspective, and I hope that as I get older, the opposite becomes true,
Right.
where like my dream and goal would be to have a bigger mentorship role in other entrepreneurs' lives or young people's lives as they're trying to like figure out what they're supposed to do, or how to deal with certain mental health things as you navigate the work world, right? Because I've experienced a lot of like ups and downs
Mm-hmm.
regarding anxiety and kind of not knowing what's happening in here. So I think probably the first half of my career, I've felt like I've been more on the network building, maybe a little bit more self-serving, but
Mm-hmm.
hopefully truly being curious about things and people. And then I hope on the backside of my career, the opposite becomes true, where I get to cultivate someone else's network a little bit more.
No, I think that is good self awareness. I think we all, to some degree or another, sort of quote, take advantage of other people. Sometimes it's not truly taking advantage of it, but that term has a bit of a negative connotation, but it doesn't necessarily have to. But I would say I too have relied on others more than they've relied on me. But I get a lot of people asking me for access to things. Sometimes it's something as simple as, "Hey, can you get me in this show?" or "Can you help me get a job?" or "Can you introduce me to this person?" or whatever. But the reality is, if those things happen one way or the other, whether it's from me to them or them to me, people always have to deliver. And if you can't deliver, when I say deliver, what I mean is if I open a door for somebody or someone opens a door for me, if I'm going to walk through that door or they're going to walk through it, they have to prove themselves, right? So,
Right.
if even that door that I opened for you for T-Mobile when you decided to make that move from California, you took a big risk, and I felt a serious sense of responsibility. So we were actually relying on each other, but the
Yeah.
truth was you had to deliver when you came through the door, because if you didn't deliver, I wasn't delivering. And so I put my trust and faith in you. But I had that because I had experienced you in a different capacity before. So while I didn't know how you were actually going to perform, I had a good sense of what I thought you were going to do, and you did a great job. But bottom line is that people do need to perform. So even if it's somebody providing access to a show or tickets to something, once you step through that door, you still have a responsibility to perform, and that performance could be
To
something.
represent yourself
Yeah,
well.
either
Yeah.
represent yourself well, or even just I don't know, something sometimes as simple as acknowledgement. And, my wife has taught me a very valuable lesson over the years that I try and remember all the time is if you do something for somebody, don't expect anything back. If you loan somebody money, don't expect it back, and don't ask for me for money. Um,
That's altruism.
yeah, and she's absolutely right, and it's hard. It's hard to do that because, like, sometimes I feel like I bent over backwards for a number of people, and they haven't reciprocated or even acknowledged or thanked me for it. I have learned to get over that, because if I'm going to do something for somebody, I got to do it out of the goodness of my heart and ability, and not because I'm expecting something back from it. And I have to remember that too when people do things for me is, how do I feel if someone doesn't acknowledge something? So I try and remember that.
Yeah.
I'm not always great at it, but we all got to work on our flaws, right?
Yeah. I think you'd be lying, right? If people would be lying if they say that they're not cultivating certain relationships based on what they can get out of it.
Hmm.
But I think that the flip side of that, it's important to acknowledge, like, yeah, we're going to leverage. Sometimes we come to people with an agenda. I mean, it's why you go to a job interview, right? You're trying to impress them to get a job. We come to people with an agenda, but I think again, the flip side of that is it is really important, and hopefully in all of us in some capacity, to in turn, as you kind of grow up, be excited to like help other people cultivate their networks and give them things, even if they're coming with more of an agenda, and
Right.
then they can prove themselves or not.
Right. Well, that reminds me of the way when I worked at the 49er games. And so I was the mascot for the San Francisco 49ers from 1988 to 1993. And
To currently.
yeah, no. Um, and back then, I would go to the game, gosh, I don't know, probably 5 hours before kickoff. If it was a 1 o'clock game, maybe I would arrive there at 9 o'clock or something, partly just to get in and not deal with traffic and stuff, but partly just to walk the field and, get my bearings. What was the weather like? What was the access like? Because on game day, it's completely different than any other day. All these different things are on the field now and people are on the field and so forth. But the one thing I did every game was I would walk around and I would make sure to say hi to everybody I came across. And maybe not literally everybody, but people that I knew
Yeah.
were going to be manning the doors or the entrances or the access to things that I would need while working a few hours later. I got to know these people. I got to be friends with these people. They were security people. They were sometimes concessions people. They were sometimes, executives of the team. It could have been anybody. Sometimes players, but not that often. But every once in a while, I would just either be introduced to somebody or get to know somebody. And over time, I really felt like I had good relationships, maybe not deep, but good relationships, a mutual trust relationship with people at all different levels at that stadium, so that if something were to come up on game day during my performance or during something that was happening, I could easily make stuff happen or get the grace or access or help that I needed. And if I think it really paid off over time. And really to this day, I still know a lot of those people. It's been
Yeah.
35 years. And, we're not great friends necessarily, but if I see them, people remember me or I have a nice conversation with them. They ask how my family's doing, things like that. So anyway, I just
Yeah.
find
I
that
mean, I
interesting.
think the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, like
Hmm.
one of the principles is just that everyone just wants to feel important and seen. Just because we value a certain position doesn't mean that that person in that position is more important, right, than
Right,
any of us.
right.
And
Or,
I
yeah.
think that if that's a really healthy way to look at the world and to build relationships, is just do your best to make people feel important.
Absolutely.
And
They are.
that goes also,
Everyone is
it's
important,
important to make yourself,
right?
yeah, it's important to make yourself feel important by taking care of yourself, speaking well to yourself, right,
Hmm.
internally or externally. And so I think going through the world doing your best to make other people feel seen is a
Hmm.
pretty powerful thing. And it's not
Absolutely.
always, sometimes
Absolutely.
sometimes we're going through a lot of, like, sometimes I'm in my own head, and I'm sure people have thought like, man, that guy's rude or whatever, but it's not because I'm dismissing someone. It's because I'm like not to myself not feeling very important that day. So it's
Right.
hard to make other people feel important, you know?
No, we all go through stuff, and we never know what somebody else's situation or story is at that moment. We never do. On the importance thing, though, which is kind of interesting, is I really try to not think that I'm any more important than anybody else. Maybe my role is, or the particular job I'm doing at that time is, quote, more important because I'm tasked with doing something that maybe they're not tasked with doing. But that's just
Sure.
a role. I
Yeah.
can't tell you
That's value versus importance. That's just
exactly.
value
Yeah.
versus important. It's like, yeah, you're more important if you have the the code to the nuclear, system. Like you're definitely more, your role is more valuable right now, but it is at the core of a person
Yeah.
doesn't make a
That's
difference.
right. A job is not a person. A person is not a job. And
Right.
and I can't tell you how many times I've interacted with people over my many years working, particularly in sports and entertainment, and sometimes technology as well, where someone was in a position of authority or strength or importance, if you will, and they acted like it and treated people very poorly, and then all of a sudden they're no longer in that role and they're just one of the regular people like me, and either you remember that, right? You remember how you were treated by them, and so you're not maybe as fond of spending time with them, or they are so beaten down that they are no longer in that position that they kind of walk around with their tail between their legs. I've actually seen that, and it's quite sad. I just think people, you know, definitely need to take people's roles into account when it comes to authority and respect and responsibility, but also realize that people are people and we're all the same in that way. We all love, we all hate, we all bleed, we all eat, we all sleep. We're not different in that way. So
Yeah. Yep.
yeah. Have you ever felt used by someone because of your reputation or your access to something?
There's very little times I've felt used because honestly, like I like when people like I like when I feel useful, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
totally.
So
Yep.
so a lot of times I don't even feel like I may have even missed it, but I'm okay like bending over for someone
Hmm.
even if maybe their intentions are more self-serving, because honestly, I feel like so many people have done so many things for me. It's like the least I can do. And I don't necessarily care to judge their intentions,
Yep.
if that makes sense. But
No.
when you ask
Yep.
if I've been used, like I don't, yeah, I'm sure people have, but like, again, I'm happy to, because I know that I have been helped by so many people. So like, I love making connections just like you do.
Yep.
Like it brings me, whether I get something out of it or not, it brings me joy to know that I like was some sort of conduit between people and maybe someone else's success.
Yep.
And I believe in a higher power too, that's like watching us, and that, they want us to interact that way. And I believe that there's blessings that come from that, whether it be for me or that person. So I don't know that I've ever felt like directly used, maybe other than by my kids every day. But
So on the flip
yeah,
side,
I mean,
do you feel like
maybe, but I don't really care.
do you ever feel like you've used somebody else and felt bad about it?
I don't feel like I've like objectified anyone career wise. Like I think I should. I think I'm very appreciative, and so I hope no one's ever felt that way.
Wait,
But definitely, like there's certain relationships that you leverage for things, and
you don't remember that time
yeah.
when you asked me to? No, I'm
What did I
kidding.
do?
I'm just kidding.
Uh,
Oh,
I mean, I hope not. Like I
no,
don't.
no, never.
I hope not.
Well, no,
I feel like if I was more manipulative in the business space, I would have a lot more money. And I've sacrificed like, being probably more strategic in business relationships for, hopefully longer term relationships and feeling generally good about how I operate business.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You mentioned something about just feeling good about being the conduit. I agree completely. In fact, I
And that's what you do. That's what you do. That's like your greatest gift, Jeff, is like,
oh,
I've seen it
thanks.
firsthand, is like it brings you joy to connect people. Right. And I
Absolutely.
think the one thing that you have the self-awareness of, and I've watched you gain this over time, is now you try not to take it as personally when people aren't, don't show their reciprocation or appreciation, but you, at the core of you, you love connecting people. Like that's, I've watched you do it hundreds of times in person, and like, whether it be text messages or introducing people, like I think it brings you joy to like be a part of someone else's connection and, hopefully success.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that, and that's absolutely true. And really, I just said this the other day when I went to a show, and I had access to something that not everybody has access to. It wasn't anything too spectacular, but it was something fun, and it included free drinks, and that was cool. But I
Hmm.
had some extra passes, and I shared them with some people, and I was telling somebody that it's way more fun for me to share my experience. If I had just gone in there by myself, I would have been, whoo,
Totally.
cool, I have access to this thing. Wouldn't have been that interesting, to be honest. And and I would much rather bring somebody along to experience. So I'll go back to the 49ers for a
Totally.
second. I would have access to, a ticket or two each game. And I would love pregame bringing my guests down onto the field so they could experience something that they've never experienced before. And this was when the 49ers were on top of the world, right, with the Joe Montana dynasty going on. And for someone to be down on that field that didn't have that experience, they remember that. I have people telling me today, gosh, I remember when you took me to a 49er game back in 1989. And I'm like, okay. And I don't always remember who I offered everything to, but they remember that. And then it comes back to me. But it's way more meaningful to me for me to share that experience with somebody else than to just
Totally.
have it by myself. So
Totally. And
yeah,
I'm the same way as you. Like giving people access to things that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, like brings me joy. And
yeah,
having, sharing any like privilege that you have with someone else is really cool. And I feel like it's been shared with me so many times. As I get older, I like more and more just want to give it back. Like I want people to I want to be able to bless others, right, with
right.
the blessings that have come my way.
Yeah, and
It's fun.
we're all givers and we're all receivers. The question is, are we happy giving? Are we happy receiving? And how can we balance that in a way that people know you're authentic and trustworthy, fun, cool, or whatever it is that they think of you, but in a way that is not forced, is not unnatural, but is truly authentic, right?
Yeah. And I think part of that is a lot of people, and I've felt this, like you feel insecure, right? That you can't provide that experience for yourself or other people sometimes.
Right.
And that's a lot of times why people aren't good at saying thank you. And
Mm,
I've learned just to like be so grateful for other people's generosity, and like making it a point just to, even like whether it be a text or whatever, just to say thank you so they know. Um, and again, but I think sometimes people aren't appreciative. It's like they are, but they feel ashamed
mm,
that they have to get that experience from someone else,
yeah.
and especially men, right? Like, and they can't provide it for themselves or their own family. But I just think I'm learning just to be like, hey, thank you, dude. And then if something comes back my way, like I want to be able to show you the love as well.
Right. Well, one thing I want to make perfectly clear, and that is a lot of these things that I provide access to other people or create experiences for, it wasn't really necessarily me creating. It's somebody providing that to me as well. It's a chain
Right.
of events. So I don't
Right.
I don't naturally have access to things. What I have built is a set of relationships that sometimes open some doors for me that I can then share with other people. So
Yep.
I also don't want to take the credit for any of that stuff. I might be the conduit. That was a great term to use. Um, but that conduit, like I said, goes both ways. And if somebody's enjoying what I get access to or have, an option or a opportunity to see or experience, hey, that's way better, because then that makes my relationships both up and down the chain or across, different relationships and meeting new people along the way. That's what it's all about to me, is just sharing that kind of experience. And I can't take the credit for it. I might be that conduit at that moment for that one person, but somebody got me there. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, what's next for you? You have any good projects going on?
Yeah, so we've got Dude Be Nice. That's like my baby that I love, and we get to do some amazing things all over the country. And schools specifically have been using this brand to really influence their school culture in positive ways, creating different events and activities around kindness with the Dude Be Nice umbrella. And we love telling stories of like the good things happening all over the country, whether it be on campuses or in communities, and celebrating kind of those unsung heroes. And because of all these experiences, some new doors have opened up, which is really cool. Talking about building a network throughout this experience, I built different relationships that I'm now working with to create other things. And the things I'm most excited about are actually working on some TV show projects that are in the works with various networks. More to come on that. And so I'm just excited to diversify through the relationships and networks that I built. And I think that also just an important side note is, I think you build your network, to your point, by proving yourself. Like sometimes you just got to create things on your own. And we live in a world where you can put anything out in the world and create an audience. And through you just doing and not depending on other people, right? It's amazing what things can happen, and the relationships and connections you can make, and the people that might reach out. And so, because of that, over the past several years, it's really opened the door to create some maybe bigger TV type of projects, which has always been a dream of mine, to produce and host some TV type of entities. So that's what I'm most excited about, man. Just creating and leveraging the network and experiences that I've had over the past 10, 20 years, and, creating new avenues, channels, properties to, ultimately hopefully put some good out into the world, and also put more people to work and create even more relationships.
Well, that's awesome. And, if there's anything I know about Brent Camalich, he's got a great heart. He's extremely creative. And I know you just never stop. You just keep going and keep making things happen. So good luck to you on all of that. Look forward to seeing where you go with it. I hope maybe we can work together again in the future. I suspect, at least in my mind, that's going to happen. I don't know when or where, but I'm looking forward to it. And then I look forward to seeing you in Texas sometime soon. I really appreciate you coming along.
Can't wait to see you, Uncle Goof.
Yeah.
My girls want to see Uncle Goof.
Awesome. I can't wait to see them. Well, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to be with me here and providing your insight. It was really valuable. Thank you.
Of course. All
right. Talk to you soon.
See you, man.
Well, that wraps up today's episode. A huge thanks to Brent Camalich for joining us and sharing the incredible story behind Dude Be Nice. If you want to learn more, check out dudebenice.com. Trust me, you'll love what they're doing to spread kindness and build community. And hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the Uncle Goof podcast. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts, and while you're at it, leave a review and share it with a friend. We've got more great guests and stories coming your way. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, be kind, stay curious, and have a little fun out there.